Morning.
Morning.
Eliezer, are we okay?
Perfect.
All right. We are on page 67 of the V'Hashem Avoda, and we're dealing with the winner of the first lottery, the winner of the first pious, who's going to do the Trumas Hadeshen. Page 67 of the V'Hashem Avoda. We started yesterday, we're continuing, we're still in the Trumas Hadeshen. This is the Kohen who won the first lottery, who's going to go to the Mizbeach, the outer Mizbeach, and remove a shovel full of ash and put it next to the Mizbeach. So now we're going to actually learn about how this was done. Maisa HaTruma. Misha Zocha B'Payis, the winner of the lottery, Nichnas L'Azora Lovadoi, he entered the Azora by himself. In other words, he's going to go to the Mizbeach by himself. Everything we're learning now comes from the Mishnayos we learned, except it's now being put into like halachic statements in summary. We'll talk about this in a minute, why he went in by himself. Umazhirin oisoi, and he was warned before he entered the Azora, Shelo yiga b'kli shores koidim shikadish yodav v'raglav min hakiyar, that he should not touch any of the kli shores, any of the holy vessels that are in the Azora. He should not touch them before he washes his hands from the kiyar. Now, the reason that he can't touch a keli has nothing to do with tumah. Remember this Kohen who won the pious, he won the lottery. He woke up before dawn in the Beis Hamoked. He went down the stairway in the Beis Hamoked and toiveled in the mikveh below the Beis Hamoked, came back up and put on his big day kahuna. So he already went to the mikveh. Kiddush Yodayim V'Raglayim from the kiyar is a separate mitzvah apart from tevilah in the mikveh. So he already did tevilah. We warn him, before he goes into the Azora, do not touch any kalim. Not because of tumah, but we want to make sure that by mistake, he doesn't take a keli and do something with it. He's not allowed to do any avoda, besides the fact that it's before dawn, and besides the fact that the doors of the Heichel are not open, and besides the fact that it's not time for any avoda yet. Remember, these Kohanim appear once every 24 weeks, and they basically are on duty one day during that week, and perhaps Shabbos. So, given the lapse of time for many Kohanim between the time that they work in the Beis HaMikdash, he is told that you, as the winner of the Trumas Hadeshen, you're going to be going into the Azora by yourself. We'll see why in a moment. But remember, don't touch any vessel, lest you touch a vessel and you do something with it, l'tzoyrech avoda, and then the avoda will be puzzled for numerous reasons. It's before dawn, you didn't wash your hands and your feet from the kiyar, so we warn him, make sure it's like a muktzah. Muktzah, you're allowed to pick up a pencil or a pen on Shabbos. There's no issa d'oraisa, there's no biblical issa to moving a pen or a pencil on Shabbos. It's a rabbinic prohibition of muktzah. Chachamim said if a person picks up a pen on Shabbos, he'll forget himself and write something. Writing on Shabbos is a biblical issa on Shabbos. So Chachamim said, as a gzeira, don't move the pen lest you come to write with it. And this is the same kind of idea. We tell the Kohen, our winner of Lottery 1, you're going to enter the Azora on your own. Nobody will be there with you to remind you of this. So we're reminding you now before you go into the Azora. Don't touch any kalim, lest you touch a keli and you do an avoda with it. Umahalech shom l'or ha'ma'arocha, and this winner of the lottery, Lottery 1, goes towards the Mizbeach. How does he see? It's before dawn. the little fire that's still lit on the Mizbeach yet from yesterday, that will light the way for him to get to the Mizbeach, until he gets to the Kiyar. The way he will see the Kiyar is from the fire that's still on the Mizbeach. Now, why couldn't one or two Kohanim go with him to accompany him to the Kiyar? Or why couldn't the Kohen accompany him with a torch so they can see where they're going? We go to Midos, diagram 3. We learned this when we learned this Mishnah in Tamid. The Kohen slept in the Beis Hamoke. That's where the Kohanim slept. They came last night. They slept here in a place you're allowed to sleep. Part of the Beis Hamoke is in the Azor. You can't sleep there. Part of the Beis Hamoke is in the Chayil. That part is you can sleep there. Our Kohen, we discussed how the door opened. Our winner of the lottery is going to walk this way through the Azorah, and he's going to pass this area right here. This is the Mizbeach to the east, and this is to the Ulam to the west. This area, as we learned in Maseches Tamid, is called Bein Ulam la Mizbeach, the area between the Ulam and the Mizbeach, and there are certain halachic rules that attach to going in this area. Not everyone, obviously a Yisrael doesn't belong here. Yisrael have the Ezras Yisrael. We talked about where Yisrael can go to when we learned Maseches Midos. Even Kohanim could not necessarily walk in this area. It has a higher level of sanctity. Ulam bein ha'ulam la mizbeach. By the same token, when we get to here, where the ramp is, that's called bein ulam la kevesh. It's the area between the ulam and the ramp. Same issue, same rules. There's a separate kedusha here. A Kohen who's perfectly tahor, he's ritually pure, and he just wants to walk around this area. He has nothing to do. He has no avoda to do. He is prohibited from walking in this area. Bein ulam la mizbeach, between the ulam and the mizbeach, and between the ulam and the ram. You can't just take a little walk here, even if you're a ritually pure Kohen. If you have avoda to do, you can walk here. You don't have avoda to do, you can't walk here. So our Kohen who left the Beis Hamoke, he wants to get to the Kiyar. He has to get to the Kiyar for the purpose of avoda. He's going to do the Trumas Hadeshin. Therefore, he's permitted to walk between the Ulam and the Mizbeach, and between the Ulam and the Ram, to get to the Kiyar. Here's your Kiyar, and you have the bar in the ground that we talked about. Ben Cotton built the bar. We'll see again this morning. He washes his hands and his feet here, and he goes up the ramp to do the Trumas Hadeshin. No one can accompany him here. Any Kohen that accompanies him here is not going there l'tzorach avoda. They're going there to hold a torch for him. They're going there to accompany him, but they have no avoda that they need to do. It's only one Kohen that's going to do the Trumas Hadeshin at this point. So no one else can go here. So therefore, the Kohen winner lottery 1 is going to have to walk here himself, and he can't carry a torch, because what's he going to do with the torch when he gets to the Kiyar? He has to put his right hand on his right foot, his left hand on his left foot, and wash his hands and his feet. Where's he going to put down the torch? So therefore, our Kohen who won the first lottery left the Beis Hamoke himself. No one can accompany him because they can't walk in this area. He can't carry a torch because he has nowhere to put it down. And he uses what fire is left under his back to light up the area, washes his hands and his feet from the Kiyar, goes up the ram, takes the shovelful of ash from the Maracha, goes back down the Mizbeach, and now goes towards the west, comes around, and right there on the western side of the ramp, there's the Beis Hadeshin. There's a place on the floor where he will pour that ash, and that's what we're going to describe now. That's the area of the Beis Hamikdash that we're in. So page 67, they warn him before he goes to do the Trumas Hadeshen. No one can accompany him. If somebody would be able to accompany him, they would be able to walk with him. And if he looked like he was going to pick up a keli, the person who's accompanying him can say, no, you can't touch anything right now because we can't do avodah. But since no one can accompany him, because no Kavi can walk in the area we just looked at, so they warned him while he was still in the base Hamoket, remember, go to the kiyar, wash your hands and your feet, do not touch any kalim, not because of Tumah, but because you can't do avodah yet. V'hakiyar, page 67, V'hakiyar hoya shakua balayla b'tor chabor k'dei shel yifsalu meima balina. The kiyar at night, if you take a look at picture 46 on page 67, this is the muchni. This is the pulley system that Ben Katan made. Before the pulley system was created, there was no mikveh in the ground, and therefore the kiyar at the end of the day would just sit on the ground. Whatever water was left at the end of the day in the kiyar had to be spilled out the next morning. Any water that's in a holy vessel that spends the night in that vessel, we'll only talk about water. Lina is also true for korbanos, but we'll only talk about water right now. The water is in the kiyar. The kiyar is a holy vessel. It gives a certain kedusha to the water. If the water remains in there overnight and is not immersed in a mikveh to keep the water in its state of holiness, the water is nifsal, it becomes unusable bolina, because it slept over. It was not used, it couldn't be used during the night. Ben Muchni wanted to improve that process, so he did two things. We mentioned from the 2 faucets on the kiyar, he made it 12 faucets, and he also made this mikveh bore in next to the kiyar, and the kiyar was lowered into the mikveh before nightfall. In the morning, the Kohen, lottery winner number 1, went to the kiyar, lifted up through the pulley system the kiyar so he can be the first one to wash his hands and his feet that day. And we mentioned the noise of that pulley system, one of the 10 miracles, they heard that in Yericho. Ulakach ata, continuing page 67, Ulakach ata, therefore now, hoya hakohen ma'aleyu min habar, the Kohen would lift up through the pulley system the kiyar from the pit, umakadosh es yoda v'raglo imeno, and he did the kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Page 68. La'acha mikan, notal hakohen es hamachta shel kesef shehoyu munachas bein hakevesh u'lemizbeach b'ma'avovo shel hakevesh. If you take a look at picture 47, we're going to look at a few things besides the Trumas Hadeshen issue. We're looking at the ramp and the mizbeach. The ramp began on the southern side of the Beis Hamikdash and continued northward. So if we go to diagram number 3, we have the ramp coming off the southern wall of the Azara, the Mizbeach, and as we move past the Mizbeach, we're going towards the northern wall of the Azara. If you take a look closely at your diagram number 3, let's see if you can actually see it. There it is. Yeah, it's hard to see, but if you took a look at the corner, southwest corner of your Mizbeach, there's what looks like a little piece of the yesod, the foundation jutting out. That's what you're looking at page 47 at the bottom of the page. Look at the Mizbeach. Remember, we said the Mizbeach, 2 sides of the Mizbeach did not have foundations. The northern side had a foundation, and the western side had a foundation. The southern side and the eastern side of the Mizbeach did not have foundations. And that's because that area where the eastern side of the Mizbeach and the southern side of the Mizbeach were built were on property that really was Shevet Yehuda. Inside the Azorah, there was a piece of property that belonged to Yehuda, the rest of it belonged to Binyamin, and sprinkling blood can only occur on the area of the Mizbeach that belonged to Binyamin. So they didn't even build a foundation on the eastern side or the southern side. So if you take a look at picture 47, you see the little shovel is on the ground. That little shovel is what the Kohen lottery winner number 1 is going to use for the Trumas Hadeshin. That shovel is put there every day, and it always remains there on the western side of the ram. You're looking at the western side of the ram. Now look at the 2 holes. One hole is really facing the western side of the Azorah. One hole is facing the southern side of the Azorah. Those were the 2 holes for Shiorei Hadam. We learned this in Maseches Tamid in one of the last Mishnayos we did before we took the break to see the halachas. After the Kohen sprinkled the blood on the Mizbeach from the Korban Tamid, remember, he splashed dam twice, but the dam ended up on all 4 corners. You take a look at your V'hoshev Avoda, page 114, pictures 124 and 124 Aleph. 124 showing the Kohen with the mizvah, the vessel that's used to collect the blood and splash it on the wall of the Mizbeach. He's going to splash the wall at 2 opposite ends of the Mizbeach, and the blood is going to go onto 2 separate walls. So it's 2 splashes, but blood will end up on 4 sides of the Mizbeach. You're getting an example right there in picture 124. The northeast corner of the Mizbeach, the Kohen stands there, splashes the blood. Part of the blood ends up on the northern wall, part of the blood ends up on the eastern wall, and he does that on the opposite corner as well. It's called Shtayim Shehem Abba, 2 splashes that end up on 4 walls. What I want to show you now is picture 124a. You notice the same 2 holes on the Mizbeach. The Shiorei Hadam, after the 2 splashes on the Mizbeach, the Mizrach will have more blood left in it. The Kohen will take the Mizrach and pour the leftover blood in the hole that's towards the southern side of the Mizbeach. This hole. You get the pen. It's this hole. This hole right here, which is towards the southern side, is where the Kohen will put the remaining blood. The hole that's towards the west will be used for something else. Okay, so let's go back to page 68. And those are the 2 holes you see at the bottom of the Mizbeach. You see the machta, the shovel, on the western side of the ram. Now let's go back to the halacha. The Kohen, after he washes his hands and his feet from the kiyar, is going to walk towards the western side of the ram, pick up that shovel, go to the top of the Mizbeach, and take off with the shovel a shovel full of ash, and bring it back down. We'll see what he does with it. That's Trumas Hadeshin. Page 68. La'achamikan, after the Kohen washed his hands and his feet for Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, notal HaKohen es hamachta shel kesef shehoyu munachas bein hakevesh ulu mizbech b'marova shel hakevesh. Ivor, picture 47. The Kohen took the shovel that's on the left side, that's on the western side of the ram. He goes to the top of the Mizbeach. Now, this we haven't seen yet in a Mishnah. The Kohen is going to do Trumas Hadeshin. It's a biblical commandment. Trumas Hadeshin is done every day. What do we do before we do a mitzvah? We make a bracha. Birchas HaMitzvahs are rabbinic. The Chachomim made a takana that before you do a mitzvah, you make a bracha. The bracha Asher Kiddushanu Mitzvaysa V'Tzivonu Al Natilas Lulav, or the bracha Asher Kiddushanu Mitzvaysa V'Tzivonu Al Achilas Matzah, or Asher Kiddushanu Mitzvaysa V'Tzivonu Leishe Basukah. These are all Birchas HaMitzvahs, and they are all of rabbinic origin. So therefore, let's say it's Sukkot, and during the day a person can't remember if he shook the lulav and esrog that day. He can't remember. So the halacha is, without getting complicated about where you are, let's make believe the person is in the Beis Hamikdash. And it's the middle of the day, and he can't remember if he shook the lulav and the esrog. He has to shake the lulav and the esrog again, but he does not make a bracha, because we're dealing with two separate halachas. Shaking the lulav and the esrog for 7 days is biblically required in Yerushalayim or the Beis Hamikdash. Machlokes about where it is, the word mikdash. But just for informational purposes, for our example, in Beit Shemesh, in Ramat Beit Shemesh, you shake your lulav and esrog on the first day of Sukkot. That's a biblical commandment. That's it. The remaining 6 days that you shake your lulav and your esrog in Beit Shemesh or anywhere outside Yerushalayim is of rabbinic nature. It's a takana of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made many takanas after the Beis Hamikdash. The second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made many takanas to make sure we don't forget the Beis Hamikdash and that we yearn for the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. And one of those takanas was that wherever you are, you shake the lulav and the esrog for 7 days. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the lulav and the esrog was taken only 1 day outside the Beis Hamikdash, and you were done with the mitzvah of lulav and esrog. The only place you had to take the lulav and esrog all 7 days is in the Beis Hamikdash or Yerushalayim. It's a machlokes. But outside Yerushalayim was 1 day mitzvah. So we're going to take the example of a person who's in Yerushalayim, and it's the 3rd day of Sukkot, or it's the 3rd day of Sukkot, and he's inside the Beis Hamikdash. He can't remember if he shook the lulav and esrog. Well, that question in his mind, did I shake the lulav and esrog, is a biblical question. He's biblically required to shake the lulav and the esrog, and he can't remember if he did. The halacha is safek d'oraisa l'chumra. When you have doubt as whether you performed the biblical mitzvah, you have to do it again. So therefore, he would shake the lulav and esrog again. However, making the bracha is a rabbinic mitzvah. And if he can't remember if he shook the lulav, he certainly does remember if he made the bracha. So he has to shake the lulav because it's of biblical origin. He does not make the bracha because it's of rabbinic origin. So the brachas are a d'Rabbanan, the mitzvah is a d'oraisa. The Kohen who's going to do the Trumas Hadeshen, he's going to have to make a bracha. He's doing a mitzvah. So the halacha says, for Ola Rosh HaMizbeach, our winner of Lottery 1 walked up to the top of the Mizbeach, Umavorech, and he makes the following bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'kedushasei shel Aaron v'tzivonu al trumas hadeshin o litrom hadeshin. The Kohen makes a bracha. Every time a Kohen does avod in the Beis Hamikdash, with rare exception, he's going to make a bracha. And the bracha has an insert to it. We all know this bracha because Baruch Hashem, living in Eretz Yisrael, we hear duchening every day. And the Kohen says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'kedushasei shel Aaron v'tzivonu. Blessed are you, Hashem, who has given us the sanctity of Aaron, asher kiddushanu b'kedushasei shel Aaron. A regular bracha for a mitzvah is asher kiddushanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivonu al achilas matzah. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivonu. Kohanim insert into their bracha asher kiddushanu Bikdushasoi shel Aaron. The Rebbeinu Shalom has invested us with the kedusha of Aaron. V'tzivanu, in this case, on Trumas Hadeshen. Now you can see the bracha is v'tzivanu al Trumas Hadeshen, and there's a bracket there, olitrom Hadeshen. This is a constant question that arises in halacha about our brachas. We have al brachas and we have lo brachas. We have a bracha, for example, we're going to eat matzah. Asher kiddushanu mitzvaysa v'tzivanu al achilas matzah. You commanded us on the eating of matzah. We don't say Asher kiddushanu mitzvaysa v'tzivanu le'echol matzah. You commanded us to eat. We make the al Asher kiddushanu mitzvaysa v'tzivanu al achilas matzah. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu mitzvaysa v'tzivanu al netilas lulav. On the other hand, we say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu mitzvaysa v'tzivanu leishev basukkah. We don't say Asher kiddushanu mitzvaysa v'tzivanu al yeshiva sukkah. Leishev, the lamed bracha. Leishev basukkah. Matzah is al achilas matzah. Lulav is al netilas lulav. Lighting candles for Shabbos is lahadlik ner shel Shabbos, not al hadlakas ner. So this is a sugya in Psachim. Rishonim deal with this. How do you know when to make the bracha with an al and when to make the bracha with a lamed? So therefore, you have two versions of the bracha for our lottery winner number one. Before he takes the shovel of ash off the top of the mizbeach, he's going to make the bracha. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvaysa, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvaysa, Asher kiddushanu b'kedushasei shel Aaron, v'tzivanu litrom hadeshen, the lamed version, or al trumas hadeshen, the al version. Whichever way you're going, the Kohen will say the bracha. A bracha is made before trumas hadeshen. He takes the machta into his right hand. That's a whole separate sugya that comes from Zavachim. Avod in the Beis Hamikdash is done with the right hand. But what happens if you have a Kohen that's a lefty? Well, you got a problem. But Avod is supposed to be done with the right hand. So he's holding the shovel with the right. He takes the shovel and he pushes the top part of the coals to the sides because he wants to get to ash. So usually you'll find ash below at the bottom of underneath the coals. So he pushes away the top coals. And then he shovels up from those coals who have been burned very well, they're ashed. B'fnim ha'maracha, inside the maracha of the wood, v'yorid min ha'mizbeach, and he goes down from the mizbeach. Vav, k'shetorim es hadeshen, when he takes the shovel of deshen, tzorach lahakbid lakachas min ha'gacholim u'min hadeshen shenasu min ha'bosa dafka v'loy min ha'gacholim shenasu min ha'etzim. What happened? They made the maracha yesterday, and they put karbonis on the maracha, and the fire consumed the wood, and the fire consumed the animal. So there's ash in there that's wood ash, and there's ash in there that's animal ash. The mitzvah of Trumas Hadeshen is to take off from the mizbeach animal carbon ash, not wood ash. Now, I'm not a professional ash man, so I don't necessarily know the difference between what is consumed wood versus what is consumed animal, but I guarantee you that people, that kohanim, that dealing with the burning of karbonis and the parts of the animal and the wood, they can tell the difference, which is between, and you probably can see it, what looks like a burnt ash log versus what looks like a burnt ash part of the animal. So the mitzvah was to make sure you took ash from the basar, the flesh of the animal that was consumed on the mizbeach, not from the ash that came from wood. There are some Rishonim that say you can take from both of them together, ash of wood and ash of the animals that hadn't been consumed as yet. Okay, we're going to skip now to page 69. Page 69, you can take a look at your picture 48. You can see the Kohen doing the Trumas Hadeshen. Halacha Tes. Shir Hadeshen Shetzarach Litrom Hu Malo HaKometz. There's a shear. How much ash does the Kohen have to actually remove from the Mizbeach? There's a shear, and it's Malo HaKometz. It's enough that would fill up his whole palm. Hainu Kamos Hanechneses B'Kometz Yodo Shel HaKohen V'Shir Ze Nimdad Lefi Kumtza Shel HaKohen HaTorah. Everybody has different sized palms. So if you had a huge Kohen, he had to make sure that it was a palm full of his palm. If you had a smaller Kohen, it could be a palm full of his palm. So there's not a standardized palm. Each Kohen has to make sure that the Trumas Hadeshen is enough ash that would fill his palm. Hagadol, lefi godloi, v'akotn, lefi kotno, yud. If the Kohen wants to remove more than a palm full of ash, he's permitted to do so. He cannot take all of the deshen off. Some must remain on top of the mizbeach. Page 70. We now have our Kohen win a lottery one. He has the machta in his hand. He has the ash in the machta, and he's walking down the ramp. Yud Aleph. La'acha shetorm yored min ha-mizbeach. He's going down the mizbeach. What direction is he walking in? He's walking away from the mizbeach, and he's walking south. If he's walking up the ramp, he's going south to north. If he's going down the ramp, he's going north to south. Yes, I skipped Zayin and Ches. They deal with Kachim Kalim and Kachim Kedoshim, and it's beyond our conversation for today. After he took the Trumas Hadeshen, he goes down the Mizbeach. When he comes to the bottom of the ramp, remember he's going north-south, so his face is facing south. Now he gets to the bottom of the ramp, Hofech Ponav Litzat Safon. He turns around towards the north. V'holech lemizracho shel kevesh meiracho ke'esa amos. He walks north, 10 amos north on the eastern side of the ramp. Remember, he got the shovel. If you look at page 68, picture 47, the shovel was on the western side of the Mizbeach. He's gone up, he got the ash, he's coming down the Mizbeach, and now he's going to go to the eastern side of the ramp, 10 amos into the eastern side of the ramp. The ramp, as we learned in Maseches Midos, is 32 amos long. It's a long ramp, and of course it's an incline. It's going up to the Mizbeach. Mizbeach, we learned, is 10 amos high. You have a ramp that starts at 0 and goes 32 amos in length. So people can do their geometry or trigonometry, whatever it is you do to figure out the incline when you want to get to a height of 10 and your ramp starts at 0 and the length of the ramp is 32, you can figure out the incline. I can't, but those of you who can, you can enjoy doing that kind of math if that is something you enjoy. So the Kohen has to now go to the eastern side of the ramp. If you look at picture 50, that's the Makom Hadeshen. We learned about this. That's a place where different things were put. After they clean the menorah in the Heichal, they put the leftover oil and the wicks, ash there. After they cleaned the inner Mizbeach from yesterday's Ketores, they brought the ash there. After the Kohen who did the Trumas Hadeshen, he put the ash there. This is the first ash that will be put there during the day. No one's cleaned the menorah yet. No one has cleaned the Mizbeach inside for the Ketores yet. Remember, we learned that in Maseches Tamid. It's later in the Seder Hayom. It's later. Right now, he's the first person that day to put ash on the base Hadeshin. So Yud Aleph, La'achar Shetorim Yorim Ben HaMizbeach, V'hofech Panav L'Tzatzofon, he turns to the north, V'holech L'Mizracha Shel Kevesh Meiracha Keser Amos, he walks 10 amos into the length of the Kevesh. Umaniach Shom B'merchot Gimel Tvoch Min HaKevesh Es Kol HaGecholim, 3 amos away from the ram. He's walked 10 amos into the length of the ram, and now at that point, 3 amos away from the ram, there's a base hadeshin, a place where the ash is deposited. V'hadeshen benachas al gavi ritzvah, he gently puts the deshen, the ash, on that area in the floor. Uvarima achas in one pile, berichok me'akever shloshet tvachim. After he left the ash next to the mizbeach, one cannot use it for anything. It is asa bahana. That's a technical halacha in Maseches Tamura, other place in Shas. Once a mitzvah has been completed, it can be used for all purposes. Is the general rule. You don't have a case, generally speaking, where here we go. Okay, Dr. Tamid tells us the incline is 18.418 degrees. There we go. Okay, I would never know how to do that, but that's what it is. It's 18 point something degrees of an incline. And I assume that that kind of incline was made so that it would be easy to go up rather than having to catch your breath as you're walking up the ramp. Okay, thank you, Dr. Tamid, Mr. Tamid, for that information. Okay, so we have a general rule. Once a mitzvah is completed, it is done. What's left over has no din me'ila. Me'ila is the rule that you can't use something that's hektish for your own personal benefit. Very severe avera with different consequences. That's called me'ila. Something that's hektish you can't use for your own personal benefit. Once whatever was hektish has been used for hektish and the whole mitzvah is completed, you can't be moral in it. You can't misuse it. It's already finished. This is one of the exceptions. This deshen, this ash, is ash from a carbon. The carbon has been shechted. The carbon's blood has been sprinkled. The carbon has been consumed on the mizbeach. It has turned into ash. The little ash that requires to be done for Trumas Hadeshen, it has been done too. It's done. It's there. Nevertheless, even though the mitzvah is completed, there's an issa hana on the deshen, on the ash. Okay. Parak Ches, we'll begin Parak Ches in order just to keep in our minds the 2 mitzvahs. There's the mitzvah of the Kohen, winner lottery 1, that has to be done every day before dawn. Well, according to the Rambam, after dawn. I just keep on saying that, but we're learning according to the other shittas, all these things are done before dawn. That is done every day before dawn. Then there's a separate mitzvah called Haitzos Hadeshen, taking out of the Beis Hamikdash, taking out of the city of Yerushalayim, the ash that gathered on top of the Mizbeach at the Tapuach. The mitzvah of Trumas Hadeshen is a shovel full of ash every day and is put on the eastern side of the Mizbeach. The mitzvah of Haitzos Hadeshen, according to the way we're learning, is done only as necessary when the top of the Mizbeach, the Tapuach, got full. If you take a look, a good picture of the Marachos. There you go. You can take a look at page 66, picture 44. The Maracha Gedola is on the eastern side of the Mizbeach. That's the large assembly of logs. That's where animals will be consumed. The western side of the Mizbeach has the small set of logs. That's where they're going to create coals to take into the Heichel to burn the Ketores. The northern side of the Mizbeach has the Maracha of Kiyum Ha'esh, to keep a fire going. If you look in the middle of the Mizbeach, there's a tapuach. We call it the apple. That's what the Mishnah calls it, tapuach. Every day the top of the Mizbeach would be cleansed, with pitchforks, shovels. We learned about this in Tamid. They would clean off this morning before dawn anything that was on the Mizbeach from yesterday, put them all around the Mizbeach. Ash would gather in the middle, and they would let it gather and gather there day by day by day by day until the tapuach got too big. When it got too big, we go to the mitzvah of Hotzos Hadeshin. So on page 71, Milvad mitzvahs, Trumas Hadeshin, besides the mitzvah of Trumas Hadeshin, Yeshna Od mitzvah, there's another mitzvah called Hanikras Hotzos Hadeshin. Trumas Hadeshin means taking a little part of the deshin, that's every day, a little part of the ash, and putting it on the eastern side of the ramp of the Mizbeach. Hotzos Hadeshin is removing the tapuach in the middle of the Mizbeach only as necessary. And that is to remove the ash that remained on the Maracha after the Trumas Hadeshin, El Michutz Lo'ir. Hotzos Hadeshin, that large gathering of ash, you don't leave inside the Beis HaMikdash, you don't put it next to the ramp of the Mizbeach, you remove it from the Beis HaMikdash, you remove it from the city of Yerushalayim. Sila Kevom Shlo Nisrufu Heitev Beis. After the Kohen lottery winner won, did the Trumas Hadeshin, Hayuboyim Shah Kohanim Shel Beis Av, the other Kohanim who were in the Beis HaMoked, they now are in their big day kahuna, and they know that the Trumas Hadeshin has been done. How do they know? Well, they certainly got a signal. Remember, we said that right before the Trumas Hadeshin was done, the Kohen had to lift up through the pulley the kiyar from the bar, which made tremendous noise that they heard in Yericho. So the Kohanim who are still in the Beis HaMoked, they hear this. So they now know that the Kohen has pulled up the kiyar. It'll take a couple of seconds till he washes his hands and his feet. It'll take a minute, 2-3 minutes until he does the Trumas Hadeshin, but they have a general idea that the Trumas Hadeshin is about to be done, and it's going to be completed within a matter of minutes. So they would leave now the Beis HaMoked. Each of these Kohanim have to wash their hands and the feet from the kiyar. They took into their hands, we learned this in the Mishnah in Tamid, some of them took what looked like pitchforks, magrefos, some of them took tzinoros, which looked like little shovels. The olam l'rosh HaMizbeach, they climb the rim and they go to the top of the Mizbeach. U'mesalken es heivorim shlo nix aklu l'tzadei HaMizbeach al gabe hakevish al gabe hasobin. They now have to clean the top of the Mizbeach. There's still the Maracha from yesterday. Just a little ash was taken off by our first lottery winner, but the top of the Mizbeach still has the consumed logs from yesterday. And it also has animal parts that may have not been fully consumed from yesterday, and they need to set up the top of the Mizbeach for today's avodah. So they took the pitchforks, they removed whatever animal limbs were still not fully consumed. They did not take them off the Mizbeach. If you take them off the Mizbeach, they are nifsal. You cannot put them back on the Mizbeach, but they need to still be fully consumed. So they took the pitchforks and put them in the middle of the Mizbeach or on the top half of the ram, and that gave them now an area to clean the top of the Mizbeach. And now there are Kohanim with little shovels who can shovel the ash, and the ash gets shoveled into the middle of the Mizbeach, and it becomes the tapuach. The limbs were pitchfork into different places at the top around the ramp. And now other Kohanim are going to come and bring logs to set up the new Marach. Gimel. HaKohen shezacha b'Trumas Hadeshin. Our lottery winner one, who was Zeicha in Trumas Hadeshin, Hayakoyre la'ezem ha'kahanim sheyirtza sheyaboy le'mizbech, v'heim boyim u'malin es Hadeshin shenisha b'mizbech la'rima gedola b'mtzoa nikras tapuach. Lottery winner number one, he did the Trumas Hadeshin. He would pick the Kohanim he wanted to actually pull or shovel whatever ash was left now into the tapuach. So that's another privilege that he got by waking up before dawn, going to the mikveh, and winning the Trumas Hadeshin lottery. As we mentioned, Chazal gave this lottery winner one as many privileges as they could. It's before dawn, so he can't really do much avoda. You can't do shchita. You can't do any of the other avodas because it's before dawn. But because we want to encourage the Kohanim to wake up that early and go to the mikveh and put on their big day kahuna, all of this before dawn, we want to give the winner of the first lottery more than the privilege of taking off a shovel of ash. So we gave him, we numbered them, we counted them as we learned the Mishnah. There are about 5 privileges they gave him. He got the privilege of the Trumas Hadeshin. He got the privilege of setting up the logs for the Marach Gedola, he didn't carry them there, other Kohanim carried them there, but he set them up, the Marach Gedola, the Marach Ketana. He also lit the fire on the Marachos, and he also had the privilege of throwing the additional 2 pieces of wood on the Marach, the Shnei Geziri Eitzim, which we saw in the Mishnah, but haven't seen yet in the Hosheres Avoda. So he had this privilege also to call the Kohanim he wanted to and say, why don't you have the privilege of pushing the ash now into the tapuach? And they would shovel the ash into the middle of the mizbech that's called the tapuach. Horodas Hadeshin, page 72, will end with this halacha for today. And picture 52 is showing you the tapuach. Sheba Mizbeach. This is accumulated over days, the tapuach. The Kohanim who would now take the ash, the tapuach, off the Mizbeach, according to the Rambam, the tapuach was removed every day, just like lottery winner one took a shovel full of ash every day and deposited it on the eastern side of the ram, and that's called Cherumas Hadeshin, done every day. The Rambam holds that the tapuach was cleaned off the top of the mizbeach every day. That's the mitzvah of Hotzoas Hadeshin. We learned the Mishnah is not like the Rambam. The Hosheves Havod on page 73 will see next week. We'll bring down this machlokes. So the Hotzoas Hadeshin, the Trumas Hadeshin is done every day with a bracha. Hotzoas Hadeshin is done as necessary. According to the Rambam, it's done every day. Irrespective of the machlokes, when it is going to be done, when it is done, you need to make a bracha. What do you add? What does the Kohen add in? Bikdushasa shel ara. Vitzivanu al Hotzoas Hadeshin. The first bracha for the winner was Trumas Hadeshin. This is Hotzoas Hadeshin. V'gorfen es Hadeshin b'chli godol hakorif sachter. They would then remove the ash from the tapuach in a large vessel called a fesachter. You take a look at diagram 52a, you can see the fesachter. They would fill that huge bowl with the ash from the tapuach. And then there would be a Kohen at the top of the Mizbeach who would be holding a rope, a Kohen at the bottom of the Mizbeach who would be holding the other side of the rope. This one rope would be around the neck of the Pesachter, and that was very heavy. They wanted to make sure that it didn't go quickly down the ramp and squash to death, the Kohen at the bottom. So there was a Kohen at the top that held it so that it would move slowly down the ramp, and that's how the Hotzos Hadeshen occurred. According to the Rambam, they did this every day, no matter how big the tapuach was. According to the other Rishonim, this was done only as necessary. This ash is going to eventually be removed outside the Azorah, outside the Beis HaMikdash, outside the city of Yerushalayim, to a place called Mokum Tahar, which we'll see in Yetz Hashem on Sunday. If you take a look at page 72, the diagram in the middle of the page, you can get a little idea of a lot of things happening in the Beis HaMikdash. It's a small picture, but you can see a lot of things that will refresh our recollection. The Fesachter is on the ramp. If you look further into the picture, the ramp, this is right, the ramp goes south to north. The ramp is between the Mizbeach and the Ulam. If you look at the back of the picture, you can see the 12 steps of the Ulam, those square steps. So we know that the Ulam is now to the west. So you can see, just by looking at the picture, you see different things that remind us of what we learned. We're looking at the ramp that's south to north. We're looking westward, we can see the steps of the Ulam. We can see in the back of the picture the pulley for the kiyar. We can see the bar where the kiyar would be in, and that is right next to the steps of the Ulam, and it is also on the western side of the ramp. Southwestern side of the ramp is the kiyar. You see the Fesachter on the ramp. You see the steps of the Ulam. In the bottom picture, you can see it even more clearly. You see the ramp on the south, the Mizbeach towards the north, the steps of the Ulam to the west. You can see the pulley system and the bar on the southwest side of the Mizbeach. So the Neder will come back to the halachas of Hotzos Hadeshen, page 73 on Yom Rishon, and then we will continue page 75 with the actual setting up of the Ma'arachos every day, the mitzvah of Sidor HaMa'arachos.